Hey, Adam from BNE Lens, and when I'm teaching Photoshop, one of the questions I get the most is how do you swap the sky from one photo with the sky from another photo? So today I'm going to show you not one, not two, not even three, but 4 different ways to change the sky in your photos in Adobe Photoshop CC. So hang around. All right, let's get down to it. So to start with, we're going to use the first technique, which is using select and mask. So we're going to start with this photo of the Golden Circle Cannery in the north of Brisbane. And it's got some interesting details in here, that kind of industrial vibe, lots of metal and rust and gritty kind of things. But we could maybe make it even more dramatic, maybe by changing that blue sky to a golden sky at sunrise or sunset. And give the whole scene a bit of a golden hue. So let's pick a sky. We're going to use this one, which is from just after sunrise at Nudgee Beach, also in the north of Brisbane. So we're going to take this and put it into the Golden Circle Cannery photo, combine the two and make it look completely seamless. So how do we do that? Well, first we've got to get the sunrise photo into the cannery photo, and that's pretty simple. We make sure we've got the move tool selected. You can also just hit V for move and click on the photo, drag it up to the tab for the cannery photo, then drag it back down and drop it onto the photo. So you can see it's now been brought into the photo, but it's considerably smaller than the cannery photo. For skies, not a really big deal. As long as the resolution is good, we should be okay. But I want to make it bigger so that it extends all the way across that sky. So I'm just going to hit Control T to change to transform. And I'll drag that bottom corner down. And if I want to see how it's going to look with the cannery photo, I can bring the opacity of this layer over here on the left-hand side down until I can see the cannery photo underneath. So looking at that, I'm thinking, it looks okay. Maybe I might move the sun across a little bit so that it's right between those two towers. Maybe there, and I'll just make sure the edges are going all the way. Drag it again. Yeah, that looks all right. All right, so I'm going to hit enter, and that'll lock in that transformation. Now I'll bring my opacity back up to 100%. So what do I do now? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of the cannery photo, which is on the bottom layer. And to make a copy, the keyboard shortcut is Control J. So I've got my background copy now. I'm going to drag that background copy on top of the sunrise layer. Now, why am I doing that? Because what we're going to do is we're actually going to hide the blue sky in the cannery photo. We're going to make that transparent, make it disappear, so that we will see the sunrise sky underneath it. So in order to do that, we're going to use select and mask, and we're going to select all of the bits of the cannery photo that we want to keep. So to do that, you just go up to the top menu and the select menu, down to select and mask, click on that. And now you see kind of a bit of a blend of the two photos. That's because we have this view selected. So there's different options. There's onion skin, marching ants, overlay, on black on white. For this one, we're going to use onion skin. So that's going to actually show us the layer below and also show what of our layer is now selected. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit to these buildings here. And I'm going to just start to drag across, and it will select those buildings. And you can see that it's selected the buildings, and the sunset is showing that's basically the part that is not selected. So that's what's going to show underneath. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit and just go around, and you can see it does a pretty good job of detecting the edges of the building. But it's still missing some of these railings and things, but we're going to come back and deal with that in a moment. So firstly, just get a really rough selection. I'm going to zoom out now. Just a rough selection of what you want to keep from the cannery photo. We basically want to keep everything except that blue sky. You can make the brush bigger by pressing the right bracket key. Okay, I'm going to zoom out and just select all the way across here. Now I'm going to be a little more careful when it comes to these bits. I'm going to use a smaller brush and zoom in so I can see what I'm doing. It's okay. It's not perfect, but we're going to refine it in a moment. These towers are definitely one. Now, you can see that it's had a bit of trouble here where there's a lot of more intricate details, but that's okay. One thing we can do is we can just hold down the Alt or Option key to deselect parts that we don't want there. But you can see it's still, we're losing some of these metal bits when we do that. So once we've got pretty much roughly the selection we want, you can see there's still bits of blue sky in here we need to get rid of. That's okay, but once we've got this kind of rough selection, we're then going to move on to the next tool, which is this one. This is going to help us refine the selection. So you'll see, I'll zoom in here. You can see that the edge here is not that great. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag across here to refine that edge. And it'll just analyze it a bit more carefully. And when I start dragging up, that's going to start bringing back all these other metal bits that we want to keep in there. See, that's much better. So we're going to go around the whole image doing that. You can see that even when I do here, it's going to start it's masking out these bits here as well. So it's giving us a much better selection. So this takes a little bit of time, so I'm not going to make you watch as I go through bit by bit doing it, but you can see that it actually is really quite good when you do refine your edge with that tool. It's going to help you get all of those really tricky fiddly bits that you would not otherwise be able to select well. So you can see I've brought that back, but I've still got a lot of railings here to go. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to speed this bit up so that you don't have to sit and watch it. So yeah, here we go. All right, finally done. You can see we've got all of those railing bits pretty well, fences, things like that. So we're good to go. All we've got to do now is hit OK. And what does it do? It creates a layer mask that's going to mask out that blue sky. So now we can see the sunrise behind it, and here's the factory in the foreground. However, it's really not looking that natural because the light on the factory was the light from a blue sky, but now we've put a yellow sky So it's a different kind of light. So what we need to do is we actually need to take a bit of that yellowness and blend it with the factory. So how do we do that? Okay, well, there's lots of different ways to do it, but I think a really good way is to actually take the original yellowness from that background photo. So what I'm going to do is make a copy of that sky, Control J to duplicate, and then I'm going to drag that on top of everything. All right, now that doesn't really make sense just yet. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to blur it to death. So I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and yeah, something really high. We don't want to see detail, we just want the color. So I'm going to bring it right up until it's just a complete blur, but it is actually the correct color from that sunrise or blend of colors. And I'm going to hit OK. All right, so I now have this layer of yellowness that is I'm going to put that over the image to color the factory. So it's all done with blend modes. Over here on the left-hand side in your layers panel, this here is blend mode. So you click down, go down to multiply. Select multiply, okay. Now that's pretty dark and pretty intense. But before we start adjusting the opacity, we don't really want to add another level of orangeness to the sky because it's already orange. So we want to mask this out. Well, the good thing is we've already got a mask. We've got the mask that we created for the layer below. So all we've got to do is use Control, hold down Control or Command if you're on a Mac, click on that layer mask, and automatically that selects the factory. But we want to mask out the sky. So that's okay. We're going to come up here to the layer that we just made with the blurry sky and just hit layer mask. And there we have it. It's masked it out for only the sky. It hasn't masked it out for the factory. So now the factory is affected by it, but the sky isn't. So now we can take the opacity and maybe bring it down a little bit so that it's a bit less extreme. So I still want it fairly strong. Yeah, maybe about there, maybe even higher. I'm gonna go crazy today. Yeah, let's have it about there. So that's about 78%. So you can see if I take away that layer, it looks quite unnatural. It looks like we've combined two different photos. But once we've got that, it kind of blends together much more effectively. What can we do to make it a little more realistic? Well, there's this bright source of light here, the sun. Maybe we can create a bit of a flare, a bit of kind of this brightness around the sun on those towers there, so that it looks just a little bit more realistic. So take maybe brightness contrast. We can use any combination of things. We can use curves, we can use levels, but I'm going to use brightness and just bring that brightness up quite crazily, like that. Okay, so now I have this crazy extra brightness, but I'm going to then hide that for most of the layer and just have it revealed just around the sun. So to do that, I've got this layer mask that's created when I create the brightness adjustment layer, and I'm going to go here to gradient, the gradient tool. It's the same group with the paint bucket. So I click gradient and I'm going to go up here and I select this one, which is going to create from white to black in a circle with the center where I start clicking. So if I click in the center of the sun here and I drag out, well, let's do it crazy first so you can see it. So if I do it like that, you can see that it's brightened up just around here and the effect gets softer as we radiate away from the sun. So without the layer, with the layer. So that makes it a bit brighter. But I think that I just want to center it just quite close to the sun. So Command Z, Control Z to undo that. And this time I'm just going to drag a short distance, like so. All right, so now, before, after, before, and after. You can see it's a subtle difference, but it does make it look just that little bit more realistic. But I think overall, we've kind of combined them reasonably well now. Now all it's about is just making it look better as a whole. So once we've got everything looking great individually, we want to make some adjustments to the whole thing, which will help unify the whole thing. So I'm going to maybe do a curves layer over top. I do want it to be a bit brighter. So I'm going to bring it up here like so. Maybe keep that contrast in the dark parts. Something like that. Before, after. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that. So there we have the finished product. So we started with this, and we've ended up with this. Dramatically different. That was using select and mask. So that was method number one. Let's move on to method number two. Let's do it with a different photo. Okay, moving on to this one. Now here we have a different situation. Sometimes you might take a photo, but the sky is so bright that it comes out all washed out and looking quite white and pale and not particularly exciting. So that's what's happened here. I've got this washed out sky and I want to bring in a different sky to make it look better. So we're going to use method number two. Method number two is by just dropping the sky on top and using the multiplied blend mode. So I've got my image here. I've got this sky here. Now this sky I sourced on the internet. Now be really careful when you're taking things from the internet. A lot of people just put things in Google Images and download it and use it. You want to make sure that it's not copyrighted material. Now, a really good way to do that is to do a CC search. CC stands for Creative Commons, and that is where people have created images that they're happy for people to use. There are different conditions, there are different kinds of CC licenses, but generally you have permission as long as you follow those conditions that they have. So here is a CC photo, Creative Commons photo. I'm going to use this for this image. And I've actually linked the source below because they wanted attribution. So again, move tool, drag, drop it on top of your photo. Okay, again, this is pretty small, but I'm going to Control T, transform tool, as we talked about in the last one, to make it bigger. And I only need the sky to be where there's sky here. I don't want these trees visible. So let's just make sure, drop the opacity. Well, I've got a little bit of this tree sticking up here. So let's just keep making it bigger until they're not going to stick above where the sky is. All right, we're good there. Enter, bring the opacity back up. Now, here is where we apply the blend mode. So we've got the sky layer on top. We're just going to go to blend mode and go to multiply. Okay, so that's looking okay, but you can see that these trees here from the photo that we've introduced are kind of interfering. They're coming through, and so are the clouds here. So what we can do is just mask that out. So if we come to this layer and add a layer mask, just clicking on that one, take the brush tool, just press B for brush, and we want a black brush. So if it's showing white and then black, just hit X to switch it. And we brush away. Now we can do that at least for these parts. And that's already a decent result. The sky blends quite smoothly. Now let's just zoom in here. Maybe we can brush a little bit more. Smaller brush, so I use the left bracket just to bring a bit of that brightness from the original photo back in those spots. But I'm not going to go all the way out to those bits on the outside. I'll let them blend with the original. Maybe here a little bit. And there we have it. So it's okay. However, I really want it to look a little more punchy. Now we've got that darker sky, I want to darken down this building a little bit too. So there's a bunch of tools you could use. I think I'm going to use the exposure tool. I'm going to use gamma correction. Gamma correction is good to just, when something's quite brightly lit and can look a bit washy, gamma correction can bring that back. So something about there, 0.85. So before, after, it's looking decent. Maybe a little more. Yeah, I like that. All right, so there we have it. That one was pretty simple. Just take the sky, drop it on top, multiply blend mode, paint out with a black brush, like create a layer mask, paint out with the black brush all the bits you don't want, and then Bob's your uncle. Again, I'll show you before and after. This is what we started with, and this is after we've changed the sky and adjusted the overall image a little bit. All right, so there you have the first two ways that we can swap out the skies in your photos. First one using select and mask, the second one using multiply blend mode. Okay, so there's two more, and let me tell you, they are very, very cool. They are actually, I've saved the best for last. They are awesome, especially when you've got things like trees, the little leaves in the sky that you want to mask out and all of that. These are for you. So if you're not subscribing already, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next two that I'm going to post together in the next video. And that is where my camera ran out of battery and I didn't realize. So all I'm going to say is give the video a thumbs up and I'll see you in the next one.